Before heavy metal thundered across the world, there was an empty kitchen, a cracked window, and the haunted stare of a child named John Michael Osbourne. Long before he was crowned the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy was just another forgotten boy on a street where dreams didn't grow. They starved. In the soot-choked heart of Aston, Birmingham, survival wasn't a lesson. It was a way of life. Factories screamed, houses sagged, and every breath felt borrowed. Raised in a small home, the sixth of 6 children, Ozzy's world was noise without warmth, discipline without tenderness, and silence that bruised deeper than fists. In those long, joyless nights, who could have imagined this boy would one day howl into the void and have the world howl back? He was beaten at home, beaten at school, and broken in places nobody saw. Misunderstood and mislabeled, Ozzy struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia, and in a world where weakness was punished, he learned to hide pain behind blank stares. By 14, that pain had curdled into something unbearable. After a failed suicide attempt, it wasn't sympathy he received, only rage. That moment didn't end his life, but it did end a piece of him. Something hardened. Hope suffocated. He stopped expecting kindness. He stopped looking for a way out. And yet, somewhere deep in that growing numbness, a fire smoldered. He dropped out of school by 15, drifting from job to job, always on the edge of hunger and despair. He tried stealing a TV, badly. Got caught. Spent time in Winston Green prison. Even in a cell, there was no peace. Only violence, degradation, and the constant echo of worthlessness. Then, a miracle in static. A cheap prison radio crackled to life, playing the Beatles' She Loves You. It wasn't just a song. It was a lifeline, a jolt of electricity to the heart, a spark in a pitch-black tunnel. For the first time, Ozzy felt something beyond pain. He felt purpose. That moment changed everything. Music wasn't just sound. It was survival, a way to scream louder than the voices trying to bury him. He knew then, he needed to be heard. Needed to be seen. In 1968, destiny answered in the form of a newspaper ad. He joined forces with guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward. The result? A band called Earth, later renamed Black Sabbath, a nod to a horror film marquee, and a signal of the doom-laden magic they were about to conjure. Their music was unlike anything before it. Dark, raw, slow, and terrifyingly beautiful. Their self-titled debut dropped on Friday the 13th, 1970, and critics hated it. But to the lost, the broken, the overlooked, it was sacred. Songs like Paranoid, War Pigs, and Iron Man weren't just music, they were emotional exorcisms. Ozzy's voice didn't aim to please, it aimed to bleed. Each note carried the wounds of a boy who never truly healed. And those wounds resonated. Black Sabbath exploded. Fame, money, global adoration. But inside, Ozzy remained haunted. The more the world cheered, the more he unraveled. Addiction wasn't a choice, it was a survival mechanism. One drink to silence the noise, another to silence the guilt. He missed rehearsals, slurred through interviews, grew distant from the very brothers he created magic with. By 1979, the unthinkable happened. They kicked him out, not face-to-face, through a surrogate. The boy who had nothing had just lost everything. He vanished into a Los Angeles hotel room, spiraling into a fog of alcohol, drugs, and isolation. Days blurred. Weeks disappeared. Ozzy was drifting toward the edge again. But then came Sharon Arden, the daughter of Sabbath's manager. Fierce. Unshakable. She saw something in him he no longer saw in himself. And then, Randy Rhoads entered his life, a young guitar prodigy whose brilliance lit the path forward. Together, they created Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, records that weren't just successful, they were resurrections. Ozzy roared back with music that sounded like a man fighting his own shadow. But fate's cruelty wasn't finished. In 1982, Randy was killed in a freak plane crash, right in front of Ozzy. Just like that, his light was gone. The grief nearly broke him permanently. He went silent for weeks, staring into nothing, holding on to only Sharon's unwavering faith. Even through heartbreak, Ozzy kept going. But the road was steep and littered with demons. Substance abuse tightened its grip. He toured endlessly, numbing pain with pills and alcohol, until in 1989, during a blackout, he nearly strangled Sharon to death. He was arrested, hospitalized. It was the lowest he had ever fallen. But Sharon didn't walk away. She stayed. And that act of impossible love forced Ozzy to confront himself. Rehab wasn't just about sobriety. It was about choosing life again. Choosing love. Choosing to become someone his children could look in the eyes. He clawed his way back. And from that struggle came No More Tears in 1991, an album full of raw confessions and bittersweet melodies. Songs like Mama, I'm Coming Home weren't just music. They were apologies, promises, and cries for forgiveness. Every performance felt like a miracle. Every sober day borrowed time. But he kept walking, kept singing, kept fighting. Then came an unexpected twist. Reality TV. The Osbournes hit screens in the early 2000s, showing a new side of Ozzy. Funny, confused, loving, occasionally incoherent, but deeply human. Viewers laughed with him, cried for him, and embraced him in a new way. But behind the comedy was a man whose body was betraying him. In 2003, a near-fatal quad bike accident crushed ribs, shattered vertebrae, and put him in a coma for 8 days. Once again, he rose. Again broken. Again unyielding. Time, however, is undefeated. In 2019, a simple fall at home led to devastating consequences. It disturbed the metal rods implanted in his back years ago, bringing agony that refused to fade. Then, the crushing diagnosis: Parkinson's disease. A rare form. Progressive. Merciless. For a man whose life was built on movement, energy, and explosive stage presence, it was a slow-motion erasure. His hands trembled. His legs failed. His independence began to slip away. And yet he never hid. He spoke about it. He invited the world into his pain, not for pity, but for understanding. Sharon became his anchor, his caretaker, his advocate. Their Buckinghamshire home transformed into a sanctuary, with ramps, therapy rooms, and the quiet rhythm of resilience. He stepped away from touring in 2023, but he didn't vanish. Through podcasts like The Osbournes, he continued to share, to connect, to howl. His children stood with him. Amy, the private musical soul; Kelly, fierce and vibrant; Jack, steady and loyal; and even Jessica and Lewis, from his first marriage, forming the quiet strength of a family bound by survival, not perfection. His fortune, estimated at $220 million, became more than wealth. It became a mission. In 2024, Ozzy finalized his will, not just to provide for his family but to give back. Massive donations to addiction recovery, mental health programs, scholarships for struggling artists, and animal shelters. Even royalties from his solo work were redirected to these causes. Because Ozzy knew what it meant to be lost. And he refused to let others drown in silence. The world didn't stop honoring him. In 2024, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame again, this time for his solo career. Universities began teaching courses about his music. Artists painted his face across city walls. His voice appeared in documentaries, films, tributes. And then, the ultimate homecoming. In 2025, the original Black Sabbath reunited for one final concert in Birmingham. It was called Back to the Beginning. Ozzy, trembling, walked on stage. Not as the invincible metal god, but as a scarred, shining survivor. The notes he sang weren't perfect, but they were everything. The $190 million from the show? Donated to children's hospitals and Parkinson's research. That night wasn't a farewell. It was a hymn. A bow. A thank you. To the fans. To the pain. To the persistence. He doesn't tour now. He doesn't jump off speaker towers. But he's still here. Talking, laughing, remembering. Still howling in a different way. His story, from a battered boy in Aston to a world-shaking legend, isn't a tale of fame. It's a lesson in endurance, in rising again, even when there seems to be nothing left, in turning suffering into sound. Imperfect, broken, defiant. That's Ozzy. And maybe that's the secret. Legends aren't perfect. They fall. They fail. But they never vanish. They echo. So if you felt something today, if Ozzy's story stirred you, or reminded you of your own fight, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We'll keep bringing you real stories that matter. Stories that howl. Thanks for watching.